pretty much everything that we were talking about in the other room, all the various organizations that you just saw from Chile, from Italy, from whatever, it's all about helping people innovate, helping people, find a community that helps them thrive and helps them bring their idea from something you explained to your parents why you were quitting college to something that actually makes a living for you. So, and then I want to do an open mic thing afterwards, but I'll explain that secondly. So, I'm going to let Paul go ahead and talk about how do we build a community.
You're gonna sing during the open mic? I have a few slides. Are you going to sing?
Go ahead, do your slides.
Yeah, well, they got to pull them up.
Yeah, but my bad. I think I forgot to mention that.
Your what?
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
What, you don't have the slides? I can do puppet show things.
Just 2 minutes, it's coming.
2 minutes. Well, I can introduce myself better then, and you can do the same.
I'm Ted.
Ted, pleasure. You heard a brief bit about myself in the other room. I started my career at Yahoo when a little company called Broadcast.com was acquired. And so I've been in streaming media for as long as one can be, besides somebody like Ted Cohen. Had a great run at Yahoo for a few years, and then got pulled heavily into the startup ecosystem in Silicon Valley. It's like I said in our pitch just about a half an hour ago, that's where a lot of our perspective comes from, helping startups with a more technology-focused approach, building infrastructure. The first startup that I built, I was having a wonderful conversation with Vicki Newman over Twitter about, and last night, the first startup that I was involved with was an event search company. We built a search engine for event technology and was successful and got acquired by StubHub, which of course caused eBay to shelve it and take it out of the market. And then the second one was an accounting company, but we built a community platform. And so a lot of what we're doing in Mediatech Ventures draws from that, recognizes that in order to best help media entrepreneurs and investors and mentors, we've got to be able to uncover all of the data, which we've heard a lot about this morning. And so that search technology plays a role in what we're doing. And then if we can, we've got to better connect people and create access and opportunities through communities. And so we're building our own social network infrastructure. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, we built a learning management system which enables us to scale these incubators that we run and even provide other industries with similar programming and similar incubators. Just 2 months ago, as an example, we kicked off a Canatech Ventures incubator out of Chicago, thanks to the infrastructure and the curriculum that we built. And so that's me in a nutshell. Nice to meet you all. I'm in Austin, Texas, so before I wrap up, if anybody wants to talk more about Austin, Texas, or South by Southwest, I went from California to Austin and haven't looked back.
Corley, how are we doing on the slides? Are they coming?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
2 minutes. Okay. The idea, I'm going to explain what's going to happen on the second part. We're going to get his slides. The second part is, if you've all had a chance to look through the schedule, there's conversations about NFTs. There's conversations about the metaverse. There's conversations about maximizing revenue. The idea of doing this session was to have an open mic thing where if anybody who didn't end up on a panel, on a session, wants to talk about something that we haven't captured in the program, this is a chance for any of you who normally don't get your hands on a microphone to talk about something, and not to come up here and pitch per se, but to basically talk about, what are we missing? Is it how do we make sure that artists get taken care of, later in their careers? There's like an organization in the U.S., Musicians on Call and Music Cares, which provide services to artists, when their equipment gets stolen, when they need medical care. I'm giving that as an example. But if there's anything that you looked at the schedule and you got here and went, this is really great, but wouldn't it be good if they were talking about X? Anybody have anything as the slides come up? Anybody have anything that they're thinking about?
20 seconds.
So, I met the Rolling Stones in 1964. I did, yeah, right. I literally what? Oh.
The computer is just there. Okay, if you click over there.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
All right, it's back over to you.
Back over to me.
So we were at the Rolling Stones 64, and now we're back here.
So I'm going to make this as quick as I can because this was meant to be more of an open forum today for you all to chat. and share some perspective. But we thought it'd be neat to kick it off with a bit of our perspective on communities, since that's exactly what we're going to do for the next half hour is give everybody a chance to have a conversation with one another. As I pressed the wrong button, I think. Yep. Turn that off. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. One of the most significant things that we've noticed out of Silicon Valley tech for the last 20 years is the fact that venture capital in particular continues to heavily move into community infrastructure, right? Community building, whether or not it's a Facebook or a TikTok or an Instagram, or it's Buddy Boss and how you can build communities on WordPress or Bandcamp and community platforms that are making it possible for folks to build audiences. There's a pretty consistent thread when you look at what the music industry is talking about with their fans and their fan clubs, and the fact that folks like Techstars and the venture capital community are all saying and raising money and building the infrastructure to make sure people connect better. And that's kind of where we're coming from. This thought at the top here is ours, a bit of a mission statement, if you will. And that's what we're doing. We're building a community that connects people intelligently. There's an algorithm that we've designed that's attempting to match people's profiles in this similar way to a LinkedIn, but do that in a way that IMDb does or tries to do for the music business, do that broadly for the entire media industry. A lot of other folks with interesting quotes that you can read. We'll share this and write it up, again, for the sake of saving time. Back when I was at Yahoo, we talked a lot about how to translate a lot of the practical and pragmatic ways to develop communities into doing that through technology. And this was a great article from Henry Bernard, who's a drummer with Dry River Yacht Club, that came out about 6 years ago for the music industry that gave those practical, pragmatic perspectives, right? Very simple things that we teach musicians, we teach actors, we teach book authors, a lot of the same concepts. And the question is, how do we start to translate these very basic real-world concepts into technology, given the fact that technology is moving at an incredibly rapid pace? The challenge is evident in the fact that my kids, my teenagers, don't discover music this way anymore, right? That where we used to use posters and flyers and communicate what was going on in the community 20 years ago, the fact is if you're not on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat today, your kids, our kids, are not going to find what's going on. And so on the right-hand side, how quickly can we make sure the music industry is adopting the social networks and the community infrastructures that's so important to helping young people, helping older people discover music and events and concerts and such. I put those thoughts together because, again, when I was at Yahoo back in 2001, this incredibly ugly graphic is being shared on purpose. Back in 2001, there was this study of media innovation that was put together. And I found it exciting to see because right there is Yahoo GeoCities, if anybody ever remembers building on GeoCities. A wonderful platform that was one of the earliest community platforms that existed.
Can I interrupt?
Please.
So it's interesting what you're talking about, because I haven't seen the slides he was going to do. GeoCities was you had virtual real estate. You had an address. I was on Hollywood Boulevard. Right. You built your house. You added things. You invited people over. Now we're talking about this thing, I've heard about it recently, the metaverse, where I think you have virtual real estate and you build something. So it's been an evolution of ideas. So the concepts that we talk about, we're all building on previous, as they say, on the shoulders of other giants. So
100%. So I'm glad you're going to have this open session afterward. That we've found in our work in media that a lot of the innovation that still needs to occur is really just some basic stuff. Making, as was shared this morning, I think Sarah shared it, that we need to make this technology, we need to make this infrastructure as simple as possible. We don't need to be chasing artificial intelligence and the metaverse and so forth so aggressively, because a lot of the existing infrastructure, a lot of the existing technology is still inaccessible. It's still too difficult for people to use. And that's why I wanted to share this. We knew this 20 years ago, 21 years ago, that this enhanced media notion on the right-hand side that you see is, again, what Arabian was sharing this morning, that we need to appreciate that media actually covers and encompasses every form of communication and every form of media. And we could take those pragmatic lessons that we teach people, being personal, right? Be yourself on the internet, And we can better communicate and develop communities around how we communicate. The question is how we do that. So what we build, and we'll share this with y'all, what we build in our incubators are flywheels. We teach in the context of flywheels rather than funnels. If you're familiar with funnels in the context of marketing, perhaps HubSpot's famous for funnels, right? Driving customers or fans into buying your tickets. We've written a lot of curriculum around the idea of funnels and flywheels instead. And that's how we teach people to think about communities. That when folks are on the internet, when your fans are on the internet as an artist, you have to appreciate that your fans are going to be all over the place. That you can't alone depend on TikTok or a Facebook group or a Twitter profile, because the fact is your audience is going to be all over the place, from mobile devices to laptops to any other device that they can get their hands on. And so the challenge is thinking in this concept of a flywheel and just building your community over time by connecting with people in a host of different ways and a host of different places. And then building the infrastructure from the bottom up underneath that to create a community. The challenge is, a lot of what we're working on is, this is what the community infrastructure network looks like today. This is a map from a couple of years ago that was put together to show all of the different community platforms, all of the different communities, all of the different social networks, all of the different things that you could possibly use if you can conceive of getting your hands around all that stuff and how it works and how to put it together. And of course, nobody can do that.
It doubles as an eye chart.
Nobody can do that, right? And yes, we'll send that, we'll write it up so you can see all of what's there. There's probably 300 or so different companies and startups to work with. So again, this morning's panels were rather wonderful to hear from the artists saying, we have to stop doing this in technology. We need to start just focusing on simplifying things and making all of this kind of infrastructure available for people, because we're racing into this stuff next, right? We're racing into this Web3 decentralized ecosystem next, and it's going to be near impossible to get our hands around intellectual property and copyright and trademarks and ownership and so forth when the entirety of the internet becomes decentralized thanks to the next version of communities and social media that's coming along. That's all I wanted to share, was some perspective on the challenges
while
in
we were
communities.
sitting here, I was trying to count. We've been partners for 5 years. Yeah. This is the 4th time I've seen you in 5 years, in person, in 5 years. And so you can say what you want about, virtual communities and whatever, because I see him every day on various Zooms and Google Meets and video chats and whatever. I'm just sitting here realizing I've spent 5 days with you in 5 years.
Maybe a bit
And I'm
more.
over it already now.
South by South.
I'm kidding.
If we could survive the 2 weeks in South by Southwest,
I'll tell you.
we do more. But
It's great. I want to touch on one thing as a starting point, and I'd like to, agree or disagree that Arabian's gone. We can talk about him now. He's really not a nice, but I'm kidding. This morning, how many of you heard Vicky's talk this morning at the beginning of the day? Okay, it was a really great talk. I only had one exception, and I didn't want to raise my hand and go, but. I understand that it's important to have artist-centric situations, artist-centric apps. I don't think, other than BTS, Taylor Swift, and maybe Kenny Chesney, Eric Church, I don't think anybody spends 7 days a week visiting, their favorite artist's website. So the important thing about when you look at that slide that Paul had up there is you build your community, but then you're connected to other communities. Because say that, it's even with BTS, there's going to be jump off points to, 80 other artists. So if you're building isolated situations, I don't think it's going to be fruitful. Back at the beginning of Twitter, there's a guy named Jeff Pulver that a couple of people mentioned to me today. He did a Twitter conference called 140 Characters. And I got to interview MC Hammer, and I met Chuck D there, and I met Amanda Palmer. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Amanda Palmer? Yay! She's brilliant. You can go to you can basically arrange to go to a museum and look at art with Amanda. I mean, she's really, go shopping at thrift shops with her. She's an amazing artist who's just done some cool shit. But Jim Jones was a rapper that was on one of the panels that I was on, and he talked about the fact that he had a friend, and he didn't say who it was, who had a successful record and amassed almost 1 million followers on Twitter in a few weeks. This is back at the beginning of Twitter. I mean, it was really quite meteoric. Over the next 2 months, he talked about buy my record, come to my show, send me emails that you like me. He basically talked about himself for 2 months, and 2 months later, he had maybe 20,000 followers. It literally just plummeted because he didn't use that megaphone to say, here's other artists I like, here's a show I've been to, here's a cool movie that I saw, here's an artist that you might not know about, here's their web address, go check them out. It was buy my stuff, see me, admire me, love me, worship me, and I never did find out who the artist was, but basically squandered what was a great opportunity. So using that as a jumping off point, anybody who hasn't been able, here, give me a mic. Want to talk about things that if you didn't get a chance.
The investment, right, that an artist, your mediatech ventures, right? So we talk about these are the platforms you got to do, you got to build a community, and this is how it's going. The whole thing we all know with a lot of artists, and most artists, is they got no money, or they don't have much money, or they're working, nights or whatever it is, or it's a part-time job, right? They've got part-time jobs or full-time jobs to be a full-time artist. But then it's the reality of what's the cost. And I'm interested to know if you guys have done analysis on, well, you got to build a community, you got to do all this. What is actually the cost, and both financially and time-wise, that actually an artist today compared to maybe 20 years ago has to put into that? And actually, I don't think any of that's really educated or brought up here at all. In this event, for example, you need 50 grand to make it as an artist.
But you don't always have to do that. Like, for instance, there was a startup that years ago. I don't know if they're still around. Jerome, are you still out there in the hall? Do you remember there was a startup in the competition 3 years ago that basically helped you? You would basically book a tour together, and in certain cities you would headline, in other cities Marcel would headline, based on the strength. Do you remember what I'm talking about? But it was really great. In other words, you basically drew off of each other's strength, and you agreed that in Lyon I'm going to headline, and in Luxembourg you're going to headline because you have a bigger following. And you basically were, instead of investing money in to try and get people to be aware of your group that nobody knew, you were touring with Marcel, who had a big following in Amsterdam. And those kind of things, using the strength of the community and using the strength of the relationships that you build is far more effective than investing 50 grand with an online marketing company that's going to get you eyeballs, and you find out that they're bots. They're not necessarily organic. Forget organic followers. They're not organic at all. They don't exist. So we haven't analyzed what it costs, but my thing is, who can I reach out to in my network that's going to help me on something? We did a panel at South by that was called Playing the Long Game. Why your relationships matter more than your Stanford MBA. Because you can call upon the network, the village, the community, whatever you want to call it, that you've built to help you. I mean, I know I keep pointing to Marcel here because he's the only person in the room I know. No, I know more people. Or Pasquale, who I'm working with now, a company called Oddball. Once we sat down and talked about what the product was, I went, we got to call so-and-so, who introduced to so-and-so. We met a software, it's called Cube. And we ended up meeting at the fabulous W Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard at Hollywood and Vine, and found that we had commonalities on, they would help us market the Oddball to people who were buying their software, and we would tell people who were buying the Oddball about Cube's software advantages. So it's not about the spend. It's about the linkage, the links, the connective tissue that you build.
So it's about collaboration, right? So it's about collaborating and being smart outside traditional means.
Right.
Which still comes at a cost, because I've got to get to the W Hotel. Not everyone's in LA. Or I've got to get to South by to hear these things or to connect. So, which is fine. And that's life. I get it. but it's kind of I'm not an artist, so it doesn't affect me in that way. But I do think, yeah. So to your point, I mean, years ago, there was no such thing as community. You built community by going to gigs and another gig at your own cost, your
Right.
own time, gig after gig after gig, and that was a cost. And I just think a lot of artists today don't recognize that. They think, oh, social networks are free, and then you get, oh, we got to build this up, but there's nothing that's actually directing them to where they have to go with it or how to.
I'll give you another example, and you might know who the artist is. I heard about an artist again 2-3 years ago. He would build a follow. He would have he'd have his community, and he would post, I want to come to Austin in 3 weeks. Where should I play? And his fans would say, we're going to call the club and tell him. He basically, and he wasn't being disingenuous about it. He actually said, I've got to, I can either do Wednesday night or Thursday night because I'm on my way to Houston. What's the best use of my time in Austin while I'm there? Not only did he get the best advice, everybody was invested mentally and emotionally in being there to support him. So it wasn't about, having a very clever booking agent who said, I got you a date at this club and we have to guarantee that 200 people are going to show up. Avoiding pay-to-play events. There's just a way to do that. Do you know who I'm talking about, possibly?
I don't know this specific name, but what I do resonate with is this, let's get the demand generation going so that they're far more invested in what you're doing than if it were to be told that, oh, I'm going to play here, right? Or it's, oh, I can't make it on. But
Right.
by nature of me having even a little bit of involvement in that decision, it goes a long way, right?
Right.
And I think you were making the point as well about one, that the BTS Taylor Swift fans are the only ones that will spend on the website, but at the same time, if you don't say, buy my music, look at me, but instead say, here's what I like, here's what I like, here's what I like, it's that value piece. And I think that's...
Well, it gives you a dimension. I mean,
Exactly. And there's a difference between, spending time on your site, but spending time in your world, right? Which is what you're saying. They may not be in your domain or looking at your feed or something, but something in life that happens to them that hits on the values that you as an artist have put into them and they resonated with, reminds them of you and says, like, gosh, yeah, that's why I love this artist, or that's why I love this. And that's what real fanship is, and that's what makes them turn into these long-term followers, right?
Exactly. And it could be something as mundane as, I need somebody to help sell T-shirts at the club for me. I went to see hopefully most of you know who Mavis Staples is. Who doesn't know who Mavis Staples is? Okay, leave the room. Mavis Staples is a legendary, what? I'm blanking on the track though. I mean, the one that everybody would know.
The involvement of the fans, even just a
No,
little
but Mavis Staples, her big hit. I'm blanking. I can't think of the track. Anyway, I went to see her at a club in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Kane's Ballroom, and she was selling T-shirts. I don't buy T-shirts. I convinced somebody upstairs to give me one here, but I wanted a Mavis Staples shirt, and I bought it. And then I get an electronic receipt that says, you've bought a T-shirt from Mavis Staples, not from Kane's Ballroom, but Mavis Staples sold me a T-shirt. And it was actually a cooler receipt getting that than, I bought a T-shirt at Kane's Ballroom and you bought a triple extra large and you should take a diet. It's those kind of little touches of that the receipt was from Mavis, thanks for buying, as opposed to, that the club charged her something to sell shirts there. So it's being smart. If you have the backing, great. If you happen to be Taylor Swift's dad and you can invest the money that he initially invested in his daughter, great. Otherwise, there's a lot of work you can do that is actually more effective. Anybody else have something though that they want to talk about that would like the microphone? Seriously, when it's open mic, it's not for me to just sit here and shoot my mouth off. Anybody have something on it? Come on up, give her a mic or. There we go. Okay, that's it. You're done. Okay, no, go ahead.
Well, you've definitely been in the music industry a lot longer than I have, and I'm very curious.
This is my 50th year. No, actually, it's more than that. I'm 200 years. I'm really, as I said to Edison, this thing may not take off. But I've been in a long time. I really
Yeah.
have, seriously.
Yeah.
But it's been my life. I love it. I quit pre-med 1 week, and 2 weeks into pre-med, I told my mother she wasn't getting a Jewish doctor. It's over.
Well, I think we're about 2 weeks into the metaverse word too. So I was quite curious, from the 200 years you've been in the music industry, how many artists are talking to you and approaching you about the metaverse and wanting to perform in virtual spaces?
Okay, so 2 things. One, the metaverse is a branding exercise for something that has been around for at least 23 years. I had a client in 1999 called Worlds Inc. If you go to worlds.net, it's still up there. Unfortunately, the guy who owns it, who's a lovely guy, but he's spending more time thinking who he can sue right now for things that they did patent 20 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of things being done that people are going, no one's ever thought of this before. They should have just looked up some patents, because he actually, when he was very early in this, a few years later, around 2005, 2006, Second Life came around. I have a friend who lives up in Santa Cruz, California, near the legendary, not Howard Hughes, the other guy, San Simeon. William Randolph Hearst, the Hearst estate. He made $15 or $20 million in 2006, 2007, building IBM World and Chase Bank World and American Express World in the Second Life. And nobody came. But he took that $20 million and bought 40 acres in Santa Cruz, and he lives on a former Boy Scout camp, off the grid with solar power. I mean, he still has, he has internet and he has running water, but it's from a well and it's from solar batteries. But the bandwidth wasn't there at the time. The installed base, processor power, all these things have been in evolution. So Second Life, luckily, sort of mothballed. If you look up Second Life, you'll see they're making a...
No, Philip.
Okay. And Corey? Yeah. It's coming back around. So when people go, we have this new thing called the metaverse, I'm going, not really. It's not new. It's getting the attention now that it deserves. Same thing with Oculus headsets, with VR. I mean, the first VR headset I played with was in '94 at MIT Media Lab. Jaron Lanier had invented his headset that was being used in there's a place called Cybersmith in Boston, in Cambridge, near Harvard. And you could put this thing on that made Darth Vader's helmet look like a baseball cap. This thing was enormous. But it was, 30 years ago. Again, the cost of, that was like a $10,000 unit. You can buy an Oculus on eBay for $150. So we're getting there. But if you realize, and I don't know, I can guess how old some of you are. I mean, I say the greatest invention that I ever played with was the Zenith TV remote control. Greatest invention of all time. Why? Because prior to the invention of the Zenith remote control TV, I was the remote control for my mom. Change the channel, turn the volume up, turn it down, go to another channel. In our lifetime, we've seen VCRs, DVRs. I don't know how many arguments anybody here has been able to get out of where you don't have to scream, get in here, you have to see this. You just hit pause for a moment, even if it's like live TV. We're at the height of really the coolest time ever and the craziness ever, and that's the hardest thing I'm adjusting to, is at the same time we talk about, that we have 500 meg bandwidth and we have whatever. We have Ukraine right now. We have, in the U.S., stupid shootings, all this stuff, and you try and come to some kind of a balance. But the metaverse stuff, again, if Arabian was here, we're working, I get to use my 2 weeks of medical school. I'm on the advisory board for his MD DAO, for his medical metaverse that he's running with a bunch of doctors from UC Irvine. The opportunities are great. The people are great. I keep teasing Marcel here because we met almost 10 years ago, or maybe more than 10 years ago now. Something like that. We met in Crans-Montana, Switzerland at a media conference. the most important thing I can say to all of you, and then seriously, if there's more you want to say or what, I'm gonna stop talking, is when you find people that you resonate with, virtually or physically hold them close to you in terms of building that network, that community. Because the people that I can pick up the phone and call, there's a guy named Mark Geiger. Does anybody ever hear of that name? Oh, okay. Somebody say to me, can you get a hold of Mark Geiger for me? Will he take a call? I go, yeah, I think so. Because when I met him, he was a senior at UC San Diego, and he was running the concert committee, and I was working at Warner Records. And he said, can I come up to Burbank and hang out for a day? 400 years later, I can call him anytime, he can call me anytime, and he's there for me, and I'm there for him.
You actually call at any time.
And I do call at any
Middle
time.
of the night while I was sleeping with some random questions.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I'm sorry. We have a couple minutes. We're going to go a couple minutes over. Anybody have anything that they feel that we should be talking about here that I'll yell out at other panels? Or is there more that you want to say? Did I answer your question in any way at all?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess, well, I've got loads of questions. I'll maybe take
We can have coffee afterwards
Yeah.
there. Anything that I'll tell you what happened here 3 years ago, and this will be the end of it. We're doing, and who was here 3 years ago for the last one before pandemic? Nobody. We were over in a theater down the block. It was like 100 degrees up in the top of the theater. They had no air conditioning. And I was doing a wrap up of day one saying, so far, what did you like what she had to say? Did you like what Vicky had to say? Did you like Paul's slides or whatever? And there's a guy way up in the top, and I said, what are you doing here? Why did you come here? And he goes, I came here to pitch in the startup competition, but I didn't get chosen. And I went, Jerome, how much time do I have left? And Jerome was over on the side. He goes, you got 5 minutes. I said, great. Get down here. Do your pitch. So he came down and he did his pitch. And it was amazing. It was basically Airbnb for recording studios. But it was sort of like remnant time. We have 3 days next weekend that was booked, that canceled. It's normally $500 a day for a lockout. You can have it for $200 a day if you book now. So he does the pitch. And I turned to Goran, who, if you met Goran Anderson, who's around here, he looks older than I do. I'm glad he's here. I turned to Goran. I said, we're having breakfast tomorrow, right? He goes, yeah. I said, we're not having breakfast. You and him are meeting because he's based in Paris and you're based in Brussels, and you're going to help him get his company off the ground. So the thing that's great about this event, and what I was trying to do here today, and I probably feel because I'm talking too much, is get everybody that's here to really talk to each other and hang out and get to know each other and figure out how you can help each other. And it's more valuable than any investment you're going to get from a VC or private equity. It's because you are a band, and you have to get to know each other, and you have to get along, and you have, how many of you have seen the movie Spinal Tap? I watched the movie the day it came out. I quit my job. I was at the record company. The music industry can be either really collegial, or it can be a bunch of pricks. Find the people that want to collaborate and avoid I say there's mensches and mooks. Gravitate toward the mensches, avoid the mooks. I think I'm totally out of time. We're starting again here now. But really, it's like my Alzheimer's. I'm back. Okay. Thanks very much. If you want to talk to me, I'm a cheap date, a cup of coffee, and we can hang out. Thank you. Does that make any sense at all? Okay.